parents need to have emotional intelligence.
Oh, yeah, they have to.
We can end the podcast right there.
The end.
I mean, honestly.
Parents, you need to have emotional intelligence.
I used to teach this course, emotional intelligence, back in the day, and scientists say that emotional intelligence is more important than IQ. And one of the things they noticed was there were men that were very smart, but they were poor. They weren't successful, but they had high IQs. They came from great lineages and families, but they didn't do well in life. They were business after business failed. But yet they looked at these other men who didn't have the high IQs, but yet they had thriving businesses, they had healthy families, and they were doing well. And that's when they conducted a test and a survey, and that's where we got the emotional quotient, or EQ, emotional quotient, was born of the testing those scientists did. And so today, what emotional intelligence is I explain it. So what is emotional intelligence? It is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage your emotions and the emotions of others. It's the ability to stay calm in chaos, to read a room, to inspire when others feel hopeless. According to studies, it predicts success more than IQ, experience, or technical skills. And I'm suggesting today parents need to have emotional intelligence.
Oh, yeah, they have to.
We can end the podcast right there.
The end.
I mean, honestly.
Parents, you need to have emotional intelligence.
One thing I also want to introduce here, there's an emotional intelligence quotient, and it consists of 5 blocks. The first block is self-awareness. Understand your own emotions. When you feel frustrated, pause and ask yourself, what is going on with me right now? What am I feeling? So it's being in tune and in touch with how you feel in the moment. Number 2 is self-regulation. Are you able to control unproductive emotions? So when I feel a certain way, can I regulate in that moment? Quick story. We lived in Plano at this time, and my neighbor had this little dog. And this dog, she'd always let it poop in my yard. And I asked him not to let this dog poop in my yard. And I was teaching emotional intelligence at the time, by the way. And I just gotten back from the road, and I'm in my office. In my office, I look out at my yard, and I see her, and I see the little dog, and it's popping in my yard, and then she takes the dog and walks away. And in the moment, I was not self-aware. I was furious. And I ran down the stairs, and I was going to give it to her, man. But then, thank God, I self-regulated because I was aware of what I was feeling. And then my self-conscious said to me, Byron, you can't say that to that man's wife. That's your neighbor, and that's his wife. How would you feel if someone spoke to your wife like that, regardless of what she had done? So I self-regulated.
So you didn't return that poop to sender?
I didn't return. I've done that before, though. You remember that, Brandon?
Listen, I was waiting for this story, so I'd like to do a compare and contrast. So why don't you just finish, and then we'll get to the younger Byron,
Byron, who was not emotionally intelligent. So with this one though, what I did do, I went back upstairs, and I wrote a note, and just told the lady what I had observed, the time, the date, the whole 9, and I asked her to please not let the dog poop in my yard, or at least pick it up.
Yeah.
Would you do that for me? Okay, then I put it in the mailbox. And the husband came over a little later and apologized. And we became good neighbors overall. We weren't the best of neighbors. I'd get their mail if they was out of town. They'd get my mail about that kind of neighbor. But we weren't feuding.
Yeah.
Because I exercised some emotional intelligence. What's your story?
Now let's tell the story of what this had to be 15 years before. All right,
at least
we were living in California, and now I want to be, I don't mind conflict, so I enjoy this version better than the other one. All right. So there was a gentleman in our neighborhood in Orange County, California, that would let his big dog take hot, steamy ones in our yard all the time. We're not talking about a little dog here. We're talking about a big dog. Big old stinking lumps of doo-doo in our yard. And my father respectfully asked him to stop letting his dog take big steamers in our yard. And he chose to not heed that warning. And so Byron decides for a little retribution. The next time he did it, he took the big steaming pile of doo-doo and threw it in the man's mailbox. When the guy came home, he had crap all over his mail. And it never happened again, though.
Yeah.
So there was a consequence. Now, those that are listening, you can choose, whether the note was most appropriate. Right now, I would argue that it greatly depends on what kind of example you want to set,
And who you're dealing with,
and
too.
who you're dealing with.
Well, see, he's going to tell you the rest of the story.
Okay.
See, the rest of the story was the guy was a hunter. It has a hobby. And one of that dog, I think it was whatever it was, retriever or whatever it was. So he was coming down the street. We lived in a townhouse, and he had a rifle.
No, it wasn't a townhouse, was it?
Yeah.
That wasn't. Well, I thought that was. No, that was in Irvine.
That was in Irvine, yeah.
But I was there then. It wasn't a townhouse. That was on Claremont.
Okay, how many times I've done that then?
You did it more than once? you got
a habitual offender.
Hold on, man. Wait a minute here, man. You got more. I mean, because in the townhouse, I wasn't there yet. I was a baby, so I wasn't there. I wouldn't have known.
That's right. You wouldn't have known that.
Yeah,
you were there, but you were a baby.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, now that happened there too. So let's forget that story.
Okay, man, you just compiling these stories,
And
man.
I did it once in Carmel, Indiana too. I forgot about that one.
Man, listen, man.
I just, you know what? I just do them service.
Yeah.
Return
to sender.
It's your dog's poop. I just take it back to you.
Yeah.
If you don't want to pick it up.
All right, now, but back to the point though of emotional intelligence.
Emotional intelligence. So the first point is self-awareness, being aware of how you're feeling in the moment. Ask yourself that. The second is self-regulation, being able to regulate those feelings. And then the third one is empathy or social awareness. And what is that? You feel what your child feels or what your person feels that you're in a room with. When your teen slams the door, ask yourself, what's behind that behavior? What are they going through? In other words, even if you're at work, if something is going on, you got to be able to be empathetic. What does empathy mean? Putting yourself in someone else's shoes, not sympathy, but empathetic. What's going on with that person? I remember I worked with a woman. I used to work at the Indianapolis Chamber of Commerce, and I was the first black male to ever work there. And I remember people treated me all, it was just a little different. Mm-hmm. But that said, one of my best friends in the world to this day, I met at the Indianapolis Chamber of Commerce, and Dave, shout out to Dave Ketterer, my man. But this young lady there was just snobby toward me. And my first thought was, it's because I'm black. But then I thought, okay, let me be aware of this, because we were in the kitchen getting coffee. And let me regulate, because I wanted to say something to her, because I had been trying to interact with her before. Mm-hmm. And then I was empathy. I said, you know what? I don't know what she's going through, because she has no reason to be angry with me. And if she's a racist, she's a racist. I mean, she's not. She may not be. And I remember I asked Dave about her. I said, what's going on? And he said, Byron, don't feel like the Lone Ranger. She treats everybody like that.
Equal opportunity.
She's an equal opportunity. She's not a snob, but she just has some problems with her own life. Mm-hmm. Okay? And so that's why sometimes when people treat you a certain way, we can't take it personally.